Hey guys, Michael here. I've got a pretty short and sweet one for you guys today. This one is less of a mod review and more of a first impressions. And the reason for that is because the one I'm going to talk about is a mod that I think is really going to require multiple campaigns, really very deep into the campaigns to really get a sense of all of the implications of it. But let me preface by starting out with sometimes a mod appears on the workshop and I immediately drop everything I'm doing to give it a try. And this one is one of those. I don't want to swear for sure that it's one I'm really going to like because I kind of have mixed feelings about it, but it is really creative, and so I'm kind of excited to dig into this and find out really just how dramatically this changes the Warhammer experience, because I think it is going to be pretty profound. So the mod in question that we're talking about is Single Region Provinces by Mr. Tarzan, and as he puts here in the title, it is a beta version right now, so I've been messing around with it a little bit. I have a feeling this one is likely to, well, in fact, he even says in the description that there's going to be changes coming to it, so it's in its early stages, but you can go ahead and give the beta version here a whirl, which is what I did, and yeah, it's really, like I said, it's very creative. So what does this mod do? It basically does two things. The first and most important thing that it does is it gets rid of provinces. So, I mean, it's exactly what it says on the tin, right? Single region provinces. I shouldn't say it gets rid of them. They're still there, but now every region is in its own province. So what you've got is what we see right here, for example, with the Silver Road. That's the name of the province, but now all of a sudden Karak is its own province. So forget about the Silver Road. That designation still exists, and I'll talk more about that here in a minute. But basically the province is now Karak. As soon as you own a single settlement, you can get all the benefits of having that single province, or of having the province. So you get to assign commandments. You get credit for your mission objectives that tell you to conquer multiple provinces, things like that. So in pretty much every way, shape, or form, the single region now counts as a full province. So in my testing so far, the first thing I wanted to make sure is that it doesn't do like any really weird things like breaking the existing missions that pop up. Those do appear to not only still work, but basically they're obviously much easier to complete. It doesn't seem to screw up the Great Book of Grudges in my early testing. But anyway, one of the reasons why I'm creating this video is to kind of throw this out there to see if anybody can think of ways that this is going to completely break the game. I figured for sure I would be able to find something almost right away that was breaking the game, and it really hasn't worked out that way. So to me, it seems like this is actually a legitimate idea. So let's talk about some of the, well, let me talk about the other major thing that it does, is that it does increase the number of building slots in every settlement. And this is one that I actually kind of wish it didn't do. I have slightly mixed feelings about it. I understand why the rationale is there to do this, but what you're very quickly going to find out is that you basically every region / province now is going to basically turn into a place where you can build almost everything. I don't love that. I like the decision making that comes with having to be selective about what buildings to build, but that's probably just not going to happen when you use a mod like this. I understand why it's in there. You're going to all of a sudden start to need more buildings in each individual province. I don't know what the right balance would be. But anyway, and obviously here in the early going, you don't have enough money to build everything anyway, but it really makes it feel like less of a big deal to be expanding your settlements with respect to their building slots. Obviously, you still want to do it so that you can get to the higher tier buildings. But anyway, so those are the two main things. It turns every region into a province. Each region does still retain that identity of its original province as well. So you will see messages appearing in the event log, for example, that tell you that you've completed the conquest of the Silver Road, even though you really haven't. You've only conquered 2 of the regions in the old province that was known as the Silver Road. So kind of a little bit of a, I don't want to say it's misleading exactly. It's just something you need to be aware of when you are trying out this mod. So that's the main thing that it does in a nutshell, but it does lead to all kinds of interesting implications, obviously. No longer do you have recruitment. So as you can see now, we're sitting in the Pillars of Grungni. We can only recruit miners, even though there is a military barracks in Karaza Karak that normally would have allowed us to build warriors, for example. So interesting little consequences similar to that. Public order is now by region instead of by province. Now, one thing that I do need to mention is that it does change starting position, so it is not compatible with Mixer, which is going to mean it's going to have a lot of compatibility issues with a lot of other mods out there. So for me, I'm doing the testing really with only this single mod and a couple of my standard cosmetic / quality of life mods, like just having the game remember my in-game crisis settings and my my camera settings and things like that. But from a functional standpoint, the only mod that I'm using here is this one. If you're going to start introducing other mods that make functional changes to the game, do so at your own risk, because like I said, this one is probably going to have pretty low compatibility, definitely with any other mods that require Mixer as one of their prerequisites. Let's go ahead and talk about a different example here. So I wanted to show an example of a faction that starts out with a single region province just to see if there's anything different at all for them. And of course, Ikiclaw starts out in the Skaven Blade. It is a single region province, always has been. So this mod doesn't change that. The only thing that it does change with respect to the starting province for Ikit is that it does increase the building slots, of course. And then another example that I wanted to show off is a faction that uses like provincial recruitment. So here we have Archon, the Warriors of Chaos, obviously use the warband recruitment system, which normally is based on the province. But now, as you can see, I've already recruited the 2 units that were available here in the Writhing Fortress into Archaon's army. And that was before I took the Writhing Fortress. Now that I've taken it, there's nothing left here to recruit. But if we look at the other regions that used to be a part of the Blood Marshes, well, still are part of the Blood Marshes, but now their own province, you can see that they still have some warband recruitment available to them, but it's not available to Archaon's army to recruit into because he's not in those quote-unquote provinces. So hopefully that makes sense. So basically, your warband recruitment does still work. The mod author does say on the mod page in the description that recruiting mercenaries should still work. I just wanted to test it out for myself and make sure that it's working more or less in a way that makes sense. And I think it does. It's going to have some impact on your play, obviously. It might actually be more beneficial for the Warriors of Chaos and maybe the other factions that rely on this type of a mercenary recruiting system, because now when you recruit from one region, you can walk across the border and recruit from another region and get even more units than what you could have before when they shared the same province. So anyway, I wanted to leave it there, but I also did want to throw it out there. I'm going to be playing this mod a lot in the near future, I can tell, because I want to experience what, like I said, some unforeseen consequences that may result from this mod. But the early going, it feels very transformational to me. And for people who played some of the earlier titles in the Total War series, it's going to feel very reminiscent of that. Not the original Medieval, because Medieval didn't play out on the map quite the same way that every game since then has. But I think since the original Rome is where you had to actually move around on the map, as opposed to armies occupying entire regions and not really following, not following all the terrain and everything on the map. Hopefully that makes sense to those of you who play those old games. But anyway, so in those early days, you didn't have regions grouped together into provinces. They were just each kind of their own little city-state, sort of like what we're seeing here. So if anybody has any experience with this mod, please do share those experiences in the comments. I think it's kind of a fascinating one. And like I said, I don't really know what the full consequences are, but I'm looking forward to doing some more testing here. I do think it's a really creative idea that got me kind of excited, and I think it might appeal to many of you as well. All right, anyway, I have probably rambled on long enough, so if you're still with me, thanks so much for watching and listening. Feel free to share any of your thoughts down in the comments below, and I will see you all in the next video.